Okay, all right, so once again, we're back in the book of Matthew. Matthew, a tax collector, meaning that he dealt with money. He was an energy worker, so money is synonymous with energy. An energy worker, he would regulate the energy, the flow of energy. Moving on to the numbers, 20, 16. So let's break down number 20. We have 2, which is duality. We have the left side and the right side. We have the masculine expression and the feminine expression of ourselves. We also have the subconscious and the conscious mind, the sun and the lunar activity within our birth chart as well as within us. It's the external and the internal realities that are merged together. We have 0, which is infinite programmable information. It's like the infinite that is at our fingertips. It's the void. I'm gonna cancel phone calls. Okay. So it's the void. It's programmable matter. Second part, the verse 16. 16, let's break it down. 1 is singularity, bringing everything that is infinite to a single point. Number 6 is the temptation. Together, making 7 is the completion. If we add the 7 and the 2, that would be the number of 9. And 9 is the fruits of the Spirit. So I'm going to get into the fruits of the Spirit. I'm just going to briefly mention them because this whole entire scripture deals with these fruits of the Spirit, but it's like, I'm going to get to that. Okay, so it's the fruits of the Spirit. So I'm going to go over them really quickly. Agape, which is unconditional sacrificial love. This is reckoning to like motherly love. Joy, peace, patience, usefulness, godliness, meaning like beneficial, being beneficial, certainty, kindness, and self-control. Okay. And I will do another study on the fruits of the Spirit because we can go really deep with that. All right. Now let's get into the chapter. So this entire chapter, chapter 20, is about the heart. And it's several different things. So once again, about energy and how we utilize our energy. It's about a process of beginning, middle, and end. And there's other nuggets that we will get into. Okay, so in the very first part of this chapter, it's giving an analogy of a kingdom it's like heaven. And pretty much it's this parable where the guy, he owned a vineyard and he went out to go find workers for the vineyard. So he went out like several times. So the first workers that were there all day, they agreed to a certain payment arrangement. They made a payment arrangement. And throughout the day, he would go back and forth, bringing in new workers. But each one of them, at the end of the day, they got the same pay rate. So the people that were there, the workers that were there, at first, they were upset. They were like, okay, why are you giving them the same amount of pay when they did less work? And he was pretty much saying, he was like, it's mine. I can give as I please. And we had an agreement. Okay, so that's an analogy right there. In the primary scripture in 16, last shall be first, and the first shall be last. Many are called, but few are chosen. Okay, so this is a turnover. If anybody has ever had a garden or knew someone that had a garden and you had to turn over the dirt every so often, or what they call it, soil every so often, or if in this analogy with the vineyard, you have to, I'm not a wine connoisseur or anything like that, don't grow any grapes or anything, but it's a process of taking, depending on the maturity of the grapes, that you would pick the grapes and produce wine with those grapes. Okay, so this is saying it's a process. Not only is it a process with us, according to our maturity level, is what we're called to do. So those that were called first, they were the ones that should have been more mature about the situation, being that they had more experience. And it wasn't necessarily about the pay, because they already had an agreement beforehand. So this is pretty much esoterically saying, when you come down here, you have a soul contract. And when you are here in the incarnation, living it out, fulfilling that soul contract, you have already agreed upon what is going to play out in your soul contract. And sometimes it can be difficult. Sometimes, you know, in our lives, we may compare ourselves to others that may seem to have it easier than us. But as we mature, hopefully, in our spiritual journey, that we realize that not only are we called for a specific purpose, but also we're not to compare ourselves to other people. Now, it's good to draw like inspiration from other people, like I can do that, or that was great that they did that. But it's not to compare ourselves to others, because we have our own unique purpose here on earth. Okay, now with the first shall be last, that is also speaking to a paradigm shift that is happening now. Before, when Christ incarnated, we were in the age of Pisces. The age of Pisces was about sacrifice, and pretty much like the whole sign of Pisces is about sacrifice, about everything that started from the very beginning. Pisces represents the beginning and the end. So out of the primordial waters in Genesis 1, that's where life came from. And as we went throughout the entire zodiacal wheel, we ended back up at Pisces. So everything that happened throughout these different ages was the dumping ground of Pisces. Now we are completely resetting in the age of Aquarius. And Pisces was the priestlyhood. We needed to seek validation outside of ourselves. We needed to be led and guided before, but now that we're in the age of Aquarius, we're moving out of that. I need to go here. I need to go to a temple. I need to be governed a certain way in order to obtain God, or this distant deity that's so far away from where I am. When this age, as it continues to progress and pick up more energy, and we get further into the age of Aquarius, we realize that God was already inside of us all of this time. It wasn't out there, it was in here. Okay, and that vineyard also represents like heaven. Heaven would be our mentality, the higher realms. That will also represent like the angelic realms, and how we may think that things are outside of us, but really it's all within. Heaven is within. Okay, if we were to say that our lives are like the vineyard in this instance, in this scripture, that we have to pay attention and we have to groom our mentality. And even at times we have to change our spiritual practices. We may even change our ideologies surrounding spirituality. But it's all part of a process that has to happen. Okay, wine is also known as the substance of gods, or the gods, or God, depending on the way you want to word it. And some grapes are picked before other grapes. Some grapes are left on the vine longer to mature because they need longer to mature, depending on their soul contracts. Okay, and grapes also represents alchemy. Now, Newton's law, now this is also playing out to a grand design, a universal law of rotation. Like if you're gardening, if you're planting fruits or vegetables, or if you're just doing any type of gardening, eventually you have to turn over the soil. You have to, chasten the soil, or I don't know gardening terms or anything like that. But however, you get what I'm saying. Like you have to really work with the soil. You can't grow a tree, a specific type of tree, in a different type of soil because it may not have the nutrients that it needs. You have to have the proper soil in order to make an environment that is conducive for its growth. So with that, the law of rotation, and I looked up like with the law of rotation and with Newton's first law of rotation, an object at rest tends to remain at rest. So that is pretty much saying that things are always changing. When it comes to paradigm shifts, when it comes to shifts, we imagine a scale. One way may be tilted all the way to the far left, and then it may come to the middle, and then it may tilt all the way to the right. So this is referring to this analogy, is that the scales will always shift. You may have a period of time where it seems like to be in harmony, it seems to be in perfect balance, but things will always shift eventually. So this is speaking in a grand design too. Things are always in motion, things are always changing. As we look back in humanity, we see that it's always cycling. You have the law of gender, that happens to play out in masculine and feminine. And those roles that have shifted, those roles that were once assigned to this group is now assigned to that group. People that are of age and people that are younger, roles have changed. You know, things are always cycling out, things are always changing. So if we know that things are always changing, and if we are on one end of the spectrum, higher up, that eventually things will go this way. And it doesn't mean that it's good or bad. It just means that it's just a cycle that plays out in humanity. So I'm going back to that number 9 real quick. The number 9 also is the Day of Atonement. And I have done a breakdown about the esoteric meaning of the Day of Atonement. And that is on the scale or on the spectrum of sacrifice. Sometimes you sacrifice to gain. Sometimes you purposely sacrifice, or sometimes the sacrifice has to be taken by force or by the universal laws. And that speaks to balancing the scales. Everything's about balance and harmony and cycling out. You have to cycle out the old sacrifice in order to produce and welcome in the new. Okay, so if energy stays still, if something doesn't have motion, then it becomes stale. It becomes lifeless. You know, something that is still, that doesn't produce energy, that doesn't move in energy. Even if we can't see it with our eyes, it is considered to be dead. It has no life. And if we are beings of life, that we know that things, once again, will always change and shift. Let me tell you. All right, for those that are on Instagram and part of the members, as well as YouTube, I will be doing the weekly divination over there. If you want to join, you can always join the members section on YouTube or either Instagram, and even subscribe here. I actually have on TikTok a subscribe section right there. Check out my book on Amazon. And yeah, one other thing, I almost forgot. My I Am That I Am Divine Guidance cards, also listed on all platforms as far as when it comes to Instagram, TikTok, Etsy, and my website. I will talk to you guys later. All right. Many blessings, divine ones. Peace.